sitting the whole talk, because not only because I'm tired, because there are quite a lot of examples in this code, so I need to be in front of the keyboard. So it's not only related to the fact that I'm a bit tired. Okay. So, about me, my name is Marcel Pociot. I'm from Germany. I am working at a web agency in Krefeld as a backend developer. You can follow me on Twitter if you want. And when I'm not working at my day job, I am doing a lot of open source because I think it's really important to give something back to the community, because we're using open source tools all the time with tools like Apache, and I mean PHP itself. So I really like to contribute something back. So I'm not sure, I think it's like 36 repositories with 600,000 downloads total. I also developed 2 Chrome extensions that you can use for Laravel test tools to quickly generate integration tests, and for Codeception. So that's mainly what I do beside my day job. Let's talk about chatbots. They're not as evil as the T1000 in here. So let's start with the definition of a chatbot. So according to Wikipedia, a chatbot is a computer program that conducts a conversation, and the conversation is either in an audio or textual representation. And also, Wikipedia says that the chatbot then should pass the Turing test, so that it should act as a human and convince the user that it's a human person. My personal definition of a chatbot is more that it's just another interface that you can use to interact with your application. So if it's your browser or if it's an app, you can see a chatbot is pretty much just the same. It's just an interface that your users can use to perform actions with your application. And to give you some examples of what chatbots could do for you as developers or for your clients, if you work for like agencies, there are a lot of use cases. So there's this big topic of chat ops, which is like DevOps, but for chat applications. And in this case, this is my personal Slack bot that I developed for our company. And what I can do with it, I can create new servers or new websites using Laravel Forge. If you're not familiar with it, it's like a server provisioning system from Laravel. And so what this allows me to do is I can just write in Slack, mention the chatbot, and say, create a site for the environment test, and then there's the repository name. And the chatbot will receive this information, create a database for me, create the site on the server, register it with Nginx. It will use the database configuration, and it automates the tasks that would normally take 10 to 15 minutes. And the good thing about this is not only that it automates it, and we're all lazy as developers, but it also shares the information on Slack. So the whole team knows, okay, there's a new site available for me that I can develop on. Another example, which is also in this case in Slack, is that you can get information. Like this chatbot, for example, gets the DNS records for a domain. And as the Laravel Forge deployment thing, it also shares the information with the whole team. And then chatbots are also great for marketing. So this is from, I don't know if you're familiar with TechCrunch. It's quite a big technology website. And what they do with Facebook Messenger, you can write the Facebook Messenger page or their Facebook page, and then you can subscribe to RSS feeds, and then you receive those RSS feeds in Facebook Messenger. And the big advantage of this is that the conversion rates for Facebook Messenger are much higher than traditional email, which is mostly because it's not so full of spam. right now. I mean, this is probably going to change the more that people actually use chatbots, but right now it works pretty good. And also, there's to get started with chatbot, it's just the right time. So this is, I think, in 2015, the number of users in the top 4 messaging applications surpassed the number of users in the top 4 social networks. So there's a user base which is just waiting for chatbot applications to be available for them. All right, so we're developers, so let's build our own chatbot. It should be easy, right? So this is just a small overview of all the available services that are out there if you want to build a chatbot. So when you start with it, you have to choose which service do you want to support. Is it Facebook Messenger? Is it Telegram? Maybe you want some SMS-based chatbot with Twilio or Nextmo, Slack. There's also WeChat, which is very popular in China, for example. So you have to decide which service you want to use. And to just step back and show you how the chatbot in general works is actually, for all these systems, it's the same. So you register an application on a developer site, for example, for Facebook. And then you give Facebook an URL for a webhook. And what happens then is someone writes to your Facebook page. Facebook will get the information that the user wrote and post it to your webhook. So this is this part. And then your application needs to validate the incoming data and see what was the text, what user sent the message. And after you validated it, you have to perform the actual message or action that you want to do, for example, deploying something. And in between, you might also need to check, are we in a conversation? Has the user talked to the chatbot before? So maybe we need to give different information to them. And as I said, this all works in the same way for every service, but every messaging service does it on its own. So Facebook, for example, sends JSON data as post. WeChat sends raw XML. And also when you reply back to those services, it's very different. For Facebook, you need to send just the response to an API. With Microsoft, you have to do some OAuth flow and then send the response. For Slack, you just have to respond a JSON string. So this all works in a different way for each driver implementation. This is why I came up with the idea of having an abstraction layer on top of all these messaging services. And that's where BotMan was pretty much born, which is this cute little robot. So BotMan is a PHP library. It's framework agnostic. You can use it with whichever framework you want or without a framework at all. You can just require it with Composer and get started right away. Or I also provide a thing which I call BotMan Studio, which is a Laravel application that has the BotMan dependency underneath and just provides some nicer tools if you want to configure chatbots. But it's not a dependency. You don't need to use BotMan Studio. You can use it in your application as well. So when you start developing with BotMan, let's say you just created a new BotMan Studio application. And so this is one of those features in the Laravel application. It has a artisan command that allows you to list all the available drivers for BotMan. So here we see that, for example, the web driver is already installed. And if we want to connect our chatbot with Facebook Messenger, we can just install the Facebook dependency. If you don't use BotMan Studio, this would just be a Composer require. And after you install the driver, you will have a configuration file where you just need to pass in your tokens for the messaging service that you use, and then you're good to go. So it's really just focused on having one code base for all messaging services. Okay, so the fundamentals of a chatbot is pretty simple. So it's like the three main pillars. You have to hear what the user says, you have to process it, and then you have to respond back. So let's take a look at how this would look with BotMan. The API is pretty straightforward, I guess. So in this specific example, we say when the chatbot hears the word keyword, we will execute the closure function. It will receive the chatbot instance, and then we can just use bot reply and reply a string back. Or if you don't want closures, you can also use a class and then an @ sign and the method. So this would, in this case, create a new controller instance and call the handle method on it. And so with this, you just define all the different commands that your chatbot can listen to. And at the end of it, you just say listen, and this will loop through all the commands available. So since this presentation is basically running on BotMan Studio, I can just try it out. So if I type keyword, it goes into the closure and it says, hello, my friend. And now this is just the web driver, which you could also use in your web application. And if you just connect this with Facebook, it just works the same way. So this, for example, is the integration with Telegram. With just the same code base, I just installed the Telegram driver and configured it. And this is what it would look like in Facebook Messenger. Of course, you're not limited to just reply one text. So if I type tell me more, the chatbot would call the reply function multiple times, and it would just reply multiple texts. Now, I said that you can use BotMan to have one code base for multiple drivers, but maybe you want to have different commands for Slack than for Telegram. For example, maybe the chatbot admins are only in Slack and the other users are in Telegram. Then you can use the group method with BotMan, give it the driver, and all these commands will only be available for Slack, and all these commands in this group will only be available for Telegram. So this is a nice way to just structure your chatbot. Now, listening to just strings is nice, but we actually want to receive some information from our users. So the easiest way to do this with BotMan is having just curly braces around parameters. And this will just be added to the closure as a second parameter, which you can then use inside of it. So if I type call me Marcel, this will get passed. It will see that call me, and then there's some parameter. And this parameter will be passed to the function, and here we can just use it to reply something. And also, this isn't limited to just one parameter. If you use multiple, they will just get appended to the closure function. So if I say, I am Gandalf the Grey, this works too. If you want even more control of these parameters, maybe you want to validate them, you can also use regular expressions. So in this case, I give it just the number regular expression to only accept numbers. So if I type, I am 32 years old, which I am, again, all the regular expression matching groups will just be appended to the closure, and you can use it in there. And if I type, I am 30 years old, it wouldn't match. Now, depending on the messaging service that you use, you could also listen not only to text input, but to attachments that your user sends to your chatbot. So, for example, with Facebook or Slack or Telegram, your users can send you images. And with BotMan, you have a receives images function, and it would just give you an array of images that you can access in the closure. And also, this is just depending on the service and what functions are available in your services. You can use it for videos as well, audio, or I think it works for Facebook too. Facebook and Telegram, for example, have the ability that your user can send a location, and then you get a location object to get the latitude and the longitude. You just saw that as I wrote, I am 30 years old, with the 30 as a word, that you can also have fallback methods. So this is especially useful if you want to give your users some information on how to actually use your chatbot. So this method will always be executed when you just type in anything that doesn't match one of the commands. So any garbage will go to the fallback method. Now, BotMan also provides the ability to store information that's related to the user. So this was actually the code that was executed when I wrote I am 32 years old. And what it does is it uses the user storage, and then it saves, which is just a key value store. It's just a JSON file underneath. And it just stores the age to the user. So this is bound to the user that interacts with your chatbot, which gets bound by the user ID from the messaging service. So if someone else types, how old am I? We're just retrieving it from the storage, and this will only be available to the user that actually has this in the storage. And in addition to the user storage, there are two other storage types available. One is the channel storage. So this is useful for messaging services that have a kind of channel concept. For example, Telegram has group chats and group messages. This would be a channel, or for Slack. So you could store channel-specific information. And even one way higher would be the driver storage, so that you can save arbitrary information to the Twitter or Slack or Facebook driver instance. BotMan also gives you the ability to react to certain events that happen in the whole life cycle of your chatbot. So for example, with Slack, there is a team join event that gets executed every time someone joins the channel. And then you can just listen for this event, and you get the payload of the event, and then you can reply and just greet everyone that joins the channel or the room. With Facebook, you have an event that gets executed every time the message that you send was actually read. So you know that the payload has the user ID, and then you can maybe perform some kind of logging, something like that. Or just another example for Telegram, there's left chat member, and then you can say goodbye. But the user wouldn't see it because he already left. Okay, so right now we always had just textual responses, but it's also possible to reply with structured objects, so messages that have attachments. So in this case, we just create an outgoing message object with a text and attach an image to it with an URL. So if I type, give me images, it shows me the BotMan logo. And also, this is just the same with videos. So here's Pickle Rick. So this is a little bit more complex. There's also driver-specific responses. So Facebook, for example, has this concept of templates that you can use in your chatbot application. which is like a predefined layout that Facebook defines. So in this case, it's a list template, which is just like a list that has 2 elements. Each element has a title, a subtitle, an image, and a button. And with this, you can create these templates in an object-oriented way and reply it just at the bottom. And this is what it would look like on Facebook. Now, this code wouldn't work on any other driver because this is Facebook specific, but you can make use of it. And this is just another example with the button template that Facebook provides. And this is what it would look like. Okay, I think it's maybe a bit too early for pizza, but we might have everything in place to order pizza now with our chatbot, right? So maybe the user would say, I want a large capriciosa with extra cheese delivered to Holiday Inn City Center, Munich. And we could do that with this fancy regular expression, right? Well, we normally wouldn't do it this way, because if we think about it, pizza ordering is just a conversation. So when I do it in real life, I pick up the phone, I call someone, and then it's a conversation that happens. So I tell him what pizza I want, he asks me where I want it delivered, stuff like that. So for this case, BotMan also has the ability to use conversations. This is the easiest version of a conversation, which is just one question. So this gets triggered if the user types, I want images. And then the bot will ask, OK, which images? And when the user answers to this question, the next closure will get called with the answer. And in this case, we can just get the text of the answer and return an image. So if I type, I want images, let me just clear that. And we all love cat images. So this is just the context. And if I would type any other command to this answer, it wouldn't call any other of the commands I might listen to. So this is really bound to the question context. Now, with the pizza conversation, this isn't as simple as just one question, because you might have multiple questions that you want to ask. So there is a conversation object that you can use and extend on. It's an abstract class. And then you can just build your conversation classes that you could reuse throughout your application, your chatbot. And the run method in a conversation is always the entry point. So you always need a run method that gets executed the first time the conversation starts. So with the pizza example, we could have a what pizza size do you want question. And we get the answer, and we can then just store it as an internal property on the conversation class. And what you would do next is, once we get the answer of the size, we can ask for the topping. So this would be another question that asks, what kind of topping do you want? We store the answer as a property and ask for the address. And this would be basically just the code for giving out the information that was stored inside of this conversation flow. And to trigger this conversation, BotMan has a start conversation method that you just give an instance of the conversation class. So to give it a try, I want pizza. It asks me, what pizza size do you want? Let's say XXL. What kind of topping do you want? Salami. Where can we deliver a tasty pizza? Holiday Inn. So then the conversation has ended, and we get all the information that was actually collected during this whole conversation process. Now, there's one issue with this. Maybe the pizza delivery service where I want to order doesn't have a XXL pizza, or the user enters, I don't know, like a wagon wheel, and they don't have wagon wheel pizzas. So what you can do instead with the messaging services that support this is you can add buttons to your questions. So you just can create a question object with a text and add buttons to it. So the label of the button in this case would be supersize, and the value that you can use internally would be XXL or large and L. And I just called this better pizza. So this is what it would look like in the web driver. So I can say supersize. What topping do you want? I want a hamburger on my pizza. And again, unique. Okay, so, and this is then the information that we get from the buttons, so we can get the values out of the button. So this allows you to structure your application code a bit better, your conversation code. And this is what it would look like in Telegram, as it supports these buttons, or in Facebook. Okay, we could take the whole pizza ordering thing even one step further by using natural language processing. So natural language processing basically means that we have a sentence like, hey, calendar, schedule dinner with Nicole at 8 p.m. tomorrow. We use this sentence, give it to a service, and this service will then pull out information from this sentence that we can use in our program. So once we give it the sentence, the service would detect, okay, the intent of this message is we want to create a meeting. And this meeting intent has different entities. So the name would be dinner with Nicole. The invitee would be Nicole. And the time would be, well, tomorrow at 8 p.m. And there are a few more services that provide natural language processing. So those are pretty much like the big three. API AI, which was renamed a few weeks ago to Dialogflow. It's from Google, and it's free. There's Wit AI, which is also free, but they have some rate limits once you hit a specific number of API calls. And there's, which is very cool, it's a service called Rasa NLU, and this is an open source Python server that you can run locally on your server. So you don't have to give all the information away to, like, Google. Maybe you don't want that, depending on the chatbot need. And this is what it would look like if you train the natural language processing. So you give it a few sentences that your users might give your chatbot or your application. And then within these sentences, you just define what the entities are. So in this case, small would be the size. Margarita would be the entity of the type. And this is automatically detected by these services. So it's an address. You don't have to do this yourself. Most of these services automatically detect specific entities like zip codes, country names, addresses, units, things like that. And with BotMan, this is actually pretty easy because BotMan has a middleware concept where we can hook in specific applications or parts of the application. So in this case, we would just create a API AI middleware, give it our token, and tell it we want to listen for the incoming action. So this is action is just a term that's used for API AI, which is just the intent name. And then we say, okay, BotMan, use this middleware for every message that you receive. So every message that gets passed to your chatbot will first be sent to API AI or Rasa NLU or whatever. And then we can say, when you hear order.pizza, which is this message action, then get some extra information that we extracted from API AI, and then we can just reply them. and we tell BotMan that you only listen to this command if it is from this middleware. So if someone just types order.pizza, this wouldn't get called. Now, I have this Rasa NLU server running locally, and then I could say, for example, I want a large salami pizza with extra cheese, something like that. And out of this text, it would detect, okay, the type of the pizza is salami, the size is large, and the topping on top of it is extra and cheese. Or, I don't know, something like, I am hungry. Give me a medium margarita with onions. So this would just get passed to these services, and they extract the information for you. Now, what I showed you is always some reaction. So the user talks to your chatbot or your messaging service, and you reply. But you can also originate messages. So, for example, you could have a cron job that sends out status updates to your Slack channel or to Facebook or Telegram to specific users, using just the say method and just pass it the user ID. Or what's even more powerful is you have also the ability to originate conversations. So you can start a conversation and on your own and send it to someone. So for example, after a conference like this, you could send out feedback conversations through Facebook Messenger with buttons where people just rate the talks, something like that. Okay, so testing the whole thing. BotMan is pretty much the only chatbot framework that has testing really built into it, because I think it's really super important. And it has a few nice helpful methods to write really TDD chatbot applications. So with your tests, you have a bot instance that you can use to send fake messages and then assert replies. So this is just a very simple example. You can say, okay, this bot, it receives the message test, and then we assert that the reply is hello. And in addition to this, you also have various more advanced assertions available. So you can assert that the reply is an array. So you can assert that the reply is not something, that it's a question, that it's a template, that maybe it's just a raw string. So it really gives you a lot of information and tools to test your chatbot applications. And I just talked about this briefly with the natural language processing. You can extend BotMan with middleware. This is pretty much the middleware system and the flow of where you can hook into with your application. So you can really extend the way that your chatbot works. For example, if you want to log every incoming message, you can just pass everything to the received middleware and to the sending middleware. You can change the way that messages get matched. For example, you might want your messages only to get matched from some administrators. So you would create your own matching middleware. So it's very flexible if you want to extend on it. And, well, yeah, this is just an example of the logger middleware I just talked about, that you can just apply it to the sending and receiving middlewares. And in addition to just having custom middleware, you can also create custom drivers. So, for example, maybe you have you don't want to support Facebook Messenger, but you have a company internal chatbot tool, then you can just create your own driver class and use it with BotMan. It's not limited to HTTP. You can also use it for other protocols. For example, Slack also has some WebSocket-based services available. So there's also a WebSocket service. So you are in no way limited to that either. Okay, I think I rushed a bit through it. That's all I have. So if you want to know more about BotMan, you can find the official documentation at botman.io, which also links to the GitHub repository if you want to look at the code. And if you're into the whole chatbot kind of thing, you can also take a look at buildachatbot.io, which is a video course I'm going to record. So yeah, take a look at it. Do you have questions? I think we have plenty of time for questions.
Do you support Slack buttons?
Sorry? Yes. So you mean buttons inside of Slack? Yeah, just as I saw it with the question, that with the add button method. Let me go to it real quick. I think that was here. So if you use the add button syntax and you just use it with Slack, then this will automatically be converted to the Slack buttons, yes. So this really just depends on the messaging service that you use. If the service supports buttons, it's supported in BotMan too. Yeah. More questions? Yeah.
What information do you get about the user?
This is also very messaging service dependent. So for example, with Facebook, you only get the first name, the last name, and the profile image. And for Facebook, you also have the ability to link accounts. So the Facebook Messenger user ID is completely different from the Facebook user ID. And when you link accounts, you can get more information. But it just depends on the messaging service. WeChat, for example, shows everything. It shows where you live. It shows the telephone number. I think just everything is in there. Yeah. But there is which is not in the slides, there's a get user method, and it retrieves all the available information from the messaging service that is available to the user. Yeah. Yeah.
Could I interact with my GitHub profile?
Well, I don't think there's a webhook for this. So you want to interact with GitHub on, for example, when an issue is created, or?
Slack. I could retrieve a list of my commits today.
Well, yeah, you just have to do some mapping of the Slack username and the GitHub username, which you could store in this user storage I showed. And then you could just, inside of these methods, you can just grab the repositories. So you just have to do this mapping of the Slack name and the GitHub name. Yeah. Yes. For the commands, or? You can get the information from the user, but you would need, if you have, for example, some static here's methods. Where is it? Like something like this. If you have here's give me images and your user writes it in, I don't know, Russian, you would need to have this also in Russian. In this case, yeah. More questions? Yeah.
Can we detect if the customer is happy or angry from the conversation? For example, I chat with the bot and I conversation detect if a client or customer is happy or angry?
Well, I think you can do this with something like API AI. So you could send every message to the natural language processing and, I don't know, like search for curse words. And if he says fuck, maybe he's angry, something like that. But so you can just log every message that you receive and use this to process it and find out the mood of your customer. Yeah. You could use this with custom middleware. But I think you would need some external service to detect if he's happy or not. Yeah.
I have a question about the languages. Does it support exotic languages like Chinese, Japanese, Arabic?
Yes. Also, so it would support it if you pass it in the here's methods, because underneath it's just a regular expression. So that would work, yeah.
How do you split the syntax? For example, the Chinese doesn't have space in certain words.
Well, I mean, you basically just have these commands, like in this case, give me images, and you want that to be Chinese.
For example, a guy wrote this in Chinese,
Yeah.
and you don't have space in the syntax. It's difficult to put a regular expression.
I'm not an expert on Chinese, so I don't know. But if you could wrap it in a regular expression, it would work. Otherwise, it might be better to use an external service like natural language processing for this. But I don't know about Chinese. So, but on a technology base, it would work. Yeah. Okay. Okay. No more questions? Then thank you all for coming.